Hello, I'm Stephanie, and this is Engage Your Pioneer Gene. It's a podcast YouTube effort for me to explore how to include the skills of my grandparents into my modern high-tech life. Today, I'm coming to you from the studios of Go10 Gaming. If you're here because you're preparing for the zombie apocalypse, you might want to make your way over to Twitch and see what they've got going on at Go10. I'm pleased to invite my guest today, Chris, who is here to talk with me about wildfire preparedness. Chris, can you share what your interest is in wildfire preparedness?
Yeah, so it appears that it's wildfire season again. And I remember last year in the Seattle area, we had it pretty bad. There was like a week where the air quality was really bad. I remember going outside and it smelled like a campfire. And no, that wasn't snow falling on your car, it was ash. Usually we have a nice offshore breeze that kind of takes that stuff away, but last year was really bad. And if I've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that you need to prepare for stuff before the actual emergency happens, like stock up on toilet paper once in a while. So my thought went to, how do I properly prepare for wildfires again this season? It looks like they're going to be a somewhat regular thing ongoing. So you, as my emergency preparedness guru, I asked you, hey, what can I do before the wildfires start to prepare for these? So hopefully I'm learning.
There is really nothing I like better than someone asking me how to prepare for an emergency.
I knew it was right up your alley. So yeah, I want to know what I can do to prepare. I know last time people were taking furnace filters and putting them on box fans and stuff. So what can I do before the emergency? Because I know from last time, like furnace filters, that little tip that everybody learned about, you went to the hardware store and they were all sold out. So what can I do beforehand to prepare for these wildfires?
Okay, so I thought we'd break this into kind of three topics. This first one, let's start with just how basic preparedness can prepare you for wildfires. I want to get into some of that because I think if you haven't done these things, you're not going to be ready for wildfire season. Okay. And because wildfire season is not the 2 weeks that we have previously experienced it here in the Pacific Northwest, it's now a much longer season in some parts of the state. And the West Coast, it's all the time. There's no time of the year that doesn't have at least a small wildfire. So the first thing I want to get to, and you've heard this before because I talk so much about wildfire preparedness, or every kind of preparedness, is that there are three ways to prepare for any emergency. The whole get home, stay home, leave home strategy, where if you are prepared to do each of these things, then there really isn't a disaster scenario that you can't at least have an initial plan for. You may have to adjust it a little here and there, but these three strategies will get you through most anything. We're going to mostly talk about get home and stay home. Oh, yeah, no, we're going to talk about stay home and leave home. Getting home, if you have a backpack at your office or in your car that has emergency supplies, you just want to make sure you've got an N95 mask in there. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. That's the only difference that you would have for wildfires, is that you want to make sure you've got that solid dust filtering mask in that kit. Okay. For stay home and leave home, there are certain aspects of those plans that you can enhance to be more prepared for wildfire season. And certainly in this area, the kinds of air quality issues we have. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you're not already 2 weeks ready, you should probably take a look at one of those kinds of plans. The ready.gov website, the Red Cross has a great prepare in a certain length of time preparedness calendar. Prepare in a year is another thing where you get a monthly email telling you what to focus on this month. They're all just ways of going through the whole food and water and sanitation and warmth or light, or in this case, cooling, and seeing what you can do to be prepared for those things to meet your needs in a situation that is not ideal, that is not normal to your everyday life. I think I have added air to this because in most of my preparedness plans, I have not often thought about air, right? Other than during this pandemic, we've been covering our faces to make sure that our air is not hurting other people. But the idea that we need to be really prepared for how to deal with air coming into our bodies is something we don't always spend a lot of time on. Now, most preparedness plans have always emphasized having those N95 masks. So this was before the pandemic when you could always get them. And now, it's a thing you want to stock up on now.
Right.
But having those ready so that you could filter out dust coming in, particles in the air. And that's the thing with wildfires is that's ash in the air. And you want to get as much of it out of the air before you breathe it in that you can. And those masks do help, but obviously you're not going to wear one 24/7. So if you haven't already done this, if you haven't put together your plan for staying at home for 2 weeks, and in this scenario, it's staying at home and pretty much keeping all your doors and windows closed, right? Which is different from other plans where you would be coming in and out. But that airflow into your home is what impacts you in this scenario. So thinking about that and how do you stay in for that amount of time? Of course, during the pandemic, we all got very used to not going anywhere and what it is to have all your supplies at home and not need to go to the grocery store every couple of days and things like that. So enhance those plans. See if you can build that out to 2 weeks. And remember that not all disasters come one at a time. So just because it's wildfire season doesn't mean we won't have an earthquake, right? You want to be prepared for all of that.
How difficult is it to follow these guidelines? Is it very expensive to get stocked up, or I haven't gone to any of these sites yet?
Yeah, so mostly no. Most of them are advocating things that are readily available. If you're really starting out with not much money, my recommendation is to start with food and see what emergency foods and stocking up on foods you can do and carve a little piece out of your grocery budget that then you can use to buy other things. That's what I did in the beginning. I started with a whistle and a glow stick. That was my emergency kit. So
Sure.
You can really start with the basics. You don't have to go to Costco and buy a year of freeze-dried food or anything crazy like that. Start small, build up a little at the time, but use these plans to say, what are the priority areas? So you may not be able to store immediately enough water to last for 2 weeks, but you could probably store enough water to last for 2 days. You could start there, and then you could look at what additional space could you find to store water and how might you go about that. Some ways are cheaper than other. If you're going to use, recycled containers, like a juice container or something, you're going to need to rotate that more often. So usually the cheaper things are a little more labor intensive and that you have to pay attention to them. But everything with preparedness has an inexpensive option that you can start with, and then you can look at building up over time. And all of these plans that I've listed here focus on that. One thing I want to emphasize on this is practice. Going from the idea of we live in this house and we go in and out and we open the windows and doors whenever we feel like it, and air coming in and air coming out, to do not open any door or window unless we specifically decide to do so. That's a big change. So having a practice day on that, even if it's just a sunny day and you're going to, we're going to close up the house, we're going to limit the airflow coming in and see how this works, then you get a sense of what you have to do. You build some routines and protocols around it. So that to me is a big point of this, is you want to practice this a little bit.
So it's more than just practicing fire drills. We need to practice maybe closing down the house. Okay.
Right. We have a high heat protocol at our house that has morphed into this air quality protocol. So start with something that you've already got. If you're yelling at the kids to close the door all the time, start there and build on it. Yeah,
we don't have whole house air conditioning, but we've over the years gotten window units. And when those are going, we want to keep the rest of the house closed down so that we don't lose our cooling.
Yeah, and it can help, I think, to just talk through the whys of your plan. Like, why are we doing it this way? Well, it's because we want to limit the amount of air coming in, then there's less air that we have to clean, that sort of thing. Okay, so
are we going to talk about cleaning the air too?
We are. We're going to do that in the next session. I really want to dig into that with you, that air quality, indoor air quality. I think that's a big issue.
Yeah.
But before we get there, let's talk about if you decided the air quality was so bad that you're going to leave the area, right? So you should already have an evacuation kit, probably one for each member of your family, so that everybody has something that they have control of. But definitely a list of things and a kit ready to go that you're going to put in the car and take off. And it's going to need to include things that you're going to use in a variety of situations, not just, the air quality is bad, we're going to go 2 states over and stay in a hotel for a couple of days until it gets better. That's a valid strategy. But planning for it to get worse than it is right now is an okay place to be too, right? To just make sure that you've got that. So put together that kit, make sure it's got all the things you would normally have in an evacuation kit, and then make sure you add that N95 mask. You want to just give yourself an advantage for that part of the evacuation where you're still in really poor air quality, right?
Okay, so this kit should work for wildfires as well as if we have a big earthquake and need to leave because the house isn't in condition to stay in.
Right. It should be your regular kit. It should have all the things that you're going to need to evacuate. And this includes things like some cash and important documents, copies of important documents. You don't want to be leaving home and then get somewhere and think, oh, you know what? We should have had a copy of the insurance card. That would have been helpful here. And you don't know what else is going to happen to you out and about. So you want to take the time to put that stuff together. The other thing to think about for this specifically is maps, is paper maps. I know we don't often carry them.
What? I have my phone. No, that makes sense.
Exactly. And as long as your phone is working, you should go ahead and use that. But maybe just throw into this kit a paper map. When we're thinking about this issue, you might have to go a couple states away before you're into the clean air. So you want to have it in multiple directions and say, all right, how is the air going? Where is the smoke headed? What's our best bet for getting to some clean air? And make sure you have a map that'll get you there. If you get sort of off the beaten path, sometimes you don't have cell signal, and it's certainly you don't always have the signal that will download a decent map. So including that in your evacuation kit can really help in this season.
Yeah, I used to carry around a big book that was just full of maps of the area.
Right? And that's great. Do they even make up anymore?
I don't know.
Thomas Guide, right? But we all have the Thomas Guide.
Yes. So I'll have to dig that out because I've got it somewhere and then put it with my kit. That's great.
Okay, so in this first session, I just wanted to cover some of that. It's all the basic emergency preparedness stuff, but you do want to have it together when you're talking about getting more prepared for wildfires. Is there anything that you feel like I didn't cover in this? Any questions you have about staying home or leaving home and how that might go?
No, it makes sense. The one thing I wrote down here was I need to do one for each member, right? So each of my kids, we need to have, their own evacuation pack that they can take control of and kind of decide what needs to go in there. So that's something that I'm going to do. That's a great idea. It's
a great way for kids to learn about this and develop the mindset of being prepared so that later on, that of course they move away from home and they don't necessarily stay prepared those first few years. But what I did with my kids is just keep giving Christmas gifts that are related to preparedness until they finally probably decided to throw it all in a backpack, might as well.
Right. Oh, that's great.
Okay, with that, I think we'll wrap up this basic preparedness session. This is definitely all the stuff you want to do for any kind of emergency. The stay home and leave home strategies are pretty similar no matter what you're doing. There's some extra stuff with wildfire preparedness, and we're going to get really into the indoor air quality next time. Thank you, Chris, for being here, and thank you for joining Engage Your Pioneer team.
Thanks, Stephanie.